This is Together, an Ada Bible Church podcast about the world of marriage, where we attempt to invite you to explore the ways marriage works and doesn't work. From practical ways of learning to biblical inspiration, we invite you to listen to other professionals and couples to help enrich your marriage. Here are your hosts, Rachel Norton and Dr. Kelly Bonwell.
Hey listeners, welcome back to your favorite marriage podcast. This is Rachel Norton and I'm sitting down with our friend Kelly Bonwell. We have a great show planned for you today. No matter if this is your first or second listen or if you haven't missed a single episode, today you will not want to miss because we are talking to Pastor Aaron and Katie Buer. This is going to be a treat.
Oh, wow. We're interviewing them today?
We are.
Wow. I'm really looking forward to this. So, Rachel, question for you before we jump into the interview. So this is our last episode of season 4. Can you believe we've done 4 seasons?
This has flown by.
Totally flown by. So my question for you, we had a lot of wonderful episodes. In fact, they were all wonderful. But what one stood out for you? And then I'll share one of mine that really stood out for me.
Well, it's always kind of an unfair question, because each one is just unique and such a treat. I will never forget, though, preparing to have Katie and Austin Moore on, where they talked about their marriage, their journey with infertility. We meet with couples before we actually record, and that time together, just stepping into their story, just being inspired by their faith. It was really impactful to me. Yeah,
I love that one. And just their, like you said, their vulnerability and just, being honest and just where they're moving in that journey. Mine was one that you and Samuel did, and I was very blown away by it.
Which one?
That was with Les Parrott. And so I've been a big fan of Les and Leslie, his wife. They have a ministry together out in Seattle, marriage ministry, written many, many, many books. But I just really loved the interview. You guys brought out his sense of humor and just all of the knowledge he has. And then the thing that really blew me away is, so listeners, Les and Leslie are doing a website called Loveology.
Yeah, they shared about that in that episode.
And I went on very, very easy. One of the things he repeated and repeated and repeated about it is it's free, free, free.
He sure did.
No expense. But it's very easy to sign up. And but the wealth of information on there, I was just blown away by it. Some really notable people just answering some sometimes simple, sometimes kind of profound questions about marriage. So definitely check that out.
I think so. And presenting content in a way that's very relevant to today, very receivable. That was great.
Yes,
great episode.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm. So we are going to get to it. Aaron and Katie, let's get started with this conversation. I think we should start with, how did you two find your way to one another? And then tell us a little bit about your family.
Oh, fun.
We can do that.
Yes. Well, Aaron and I grew up in different states. So I grew up in Iowa and he grew up here in Michigan, Caledonia. And so the way that we ended up meeting each other was at Moody Bible Institute. We both went to college there and we had a class together.
It's true. It was English class. And Katie was very into me from the beginning.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think that's true.
No, we heard something different.
We'll get to that, but I have a much more important question right now.
Yes.
So Giordano's, Geno's East, or...
That is a good question.
What are you guys?
Thankfully, Aaron and I agree on the location, and we believe it's Giordano's.
Oh, yeah.
That deep dish
there you
pizza.
go.
That's how we always did it. Yeah.
Good for you. That's my favorite, too.
Is it? Wonderful.
Yeah. I don't know who these people are putting cornbread on their pizza. Geno's. I don't know.
So you met in college, but I understand when you were in that class together, you might have been dating someone else at that time.
It was our first year at school. And second semester, we had a class together. I happened to be dating somebody else at the time. But it was a nice, I feel like we only had 15 people in our class.
Yeah, it was really small.
It was a very small class. And so he sat right in front of me and I don't know, we had a little bit of interaction.
Yeah, I definitely noticed you and was interested in you, but of course there was this other guy.
There was a slight problem.
Yeah.
But you were curious already.
Yeah, I think curious is a good word. And when we came back for our sophomore year, we, reconnected and...
Right. So Moody, if you haven't been there, it's right in the heart of Chicago. And there's the dorms form kind of like a courtyard in the middle. So we're arriving, I think I probably just brought all my boxes and suitcases up to my dorm and was walking through the plaza, and I see Aaron. And earlier in the summer, the guy that I had been dating, we had broken up. And so I consciously thought that maybe Aaron, I don't know, had a slight interest in me. So I was like, what do I do at this point? Do I acknowledge him or just keep walking? Well, I decided to acknowledge him and say hi, because that's pretty much my personality. And of course, Aaron was there and ready to say hi to me.
What was that like when she said hi, Aaron?
Aaron, do you remember that moment?
I do, and we've talked about it lots of times, and I don't know exactly how it went down, but I definitely asked her, how's so-and-so?
Oh, you came right out with it about the other guy.
He did not wait long to ask about.
Oh, that is hilarious.
Yeah. And of course I was like, if I say that we broke up, I think he's going to fully pursue me. And so I said, yeah, well, things didn't work out. And he could not hold back his smile. It just his whole face just lit up. And it's like, oh boy, what do I do with that?
Wow. You saw something special in her right away. So then you guys just started dating shortly after that, or?
No, that's not how it went down. We started hanging out.
I want to hear Aaron tell this part.
Well, okay. So Katie didn't want to date anybody because she wanted to focus on school. She wanted to focus on her faith. She didn't want to jump from one thing to another.
I mean, Moody is surrounded by a lot of really great people.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to just jump from one person to the next person. So I was like, I think in wisdom and discernment, it's better for me to just really take my time and use this valuable time of studying and preparing and to just wait for the next person and not jump in fully as fast next time.
Yeah. But my background was in high school. I had dated, one person to the next. I always had somebody that I was involved with. And so during that freshman year of college, there was a guy on my dorm floor that I didn't even know that well. And he was a very strange dude. He had really long hair. He liked to do medieval reenactments.
Of course.
Yeah. So just your normal dude. No offense to medieval reenactors, but, and he challenged me. He just saw something off in me, and he challenged me not to date anybody that first year. And for whatever reason, I listened to him. And so for the first time in my life, I was, since I was an older teenager, was not actively pursuing some girl or in a relationship with some girl. And then I was very interested in Katie, but she was slow about wanting to be in a relationship. So it was a testing time for me to go, okay, do I have the patience and do I have the strength to pursue this girl who's going to continue to say no to an actual relationship for a while? And that went on for months. And there's definitely some funny moments of me conjuring up the courage to, what do you think about dating now? No, nicer than that, but no, not yet.
Oh, that's so
not
funny.
Yet.
Now, so I can get a good picture. So are you friends at this point?
Yeah. And we were hanging out a lot. And
okay.
Something about Moody at that time is, they served meals in the cafeteria, but on Sunday nights you were on your own. And so almost every Sunday night we would go out for dinner.
Yeah, just the two of us.
Yep.
And so it's almost
that sounds like a date.
It does sound like a date, but we weren't boyfriend and girlfriend, I guess.
No.
Yep.
I loved that Aaron was willing to get to know me. I wanted him to fully know, as fully as a few months in college can be, but I wanted him to know me before I said, yes, I think we need, and I wanted to know him as well. Let's pursue this. I didn't want it to just be a light relationship. I wanted it to be really purposeful. So the cool thing was that he was willing to become friends with my friends, which then my friends were like, yeah, we kind of like him. We like how, I don't know. It was just a good confirmation that he was willing to stick it out and work hard to show me that he was interested and willing to pursue me. and get to know me, and that he was sticking around.
Yep.
So he won the friends over.
He won the friends over, and I think they actually the ones that gave him the courage to continue, because they're like, you would probably get discouraged, because I'm sure it was a little bit confusing for you, because I probably acted like I was very interested in you, because I really actually was very interested in Aaron, but I was trying to guard my heart and to just make sure that this was something that maybe could be a long-term relationship.
Yeah. I remember calling your roommate Brooke, which, if you can imagine, a person that looks just like Katie, same height, same
we were
hair
somehow
color.
twins, and we just...
They were roommates.
We didn't know each other. We were just assigned together, and it was a perfect match.
And I remember calling Brooke and just being like, she's never gonna, she's not. And she, Brooke would be, yeah, she is. Just be patient, But it was such a character forming time for me. And by the time it came around to actually dating, like, I knew I was 100% in, and so then when we were dating, there was this other funny, awkward moment where, because I used to play guitar, lead worship and all that. And so I showed up to dinner one time.
Yeah.
When we...
At college.
Yeah.
In the cafeteria.
I think we were dating at this point.
Yes. But it was very early on in our relationship.
Like 2 weeks or something, and I announced that I'd written a song.
Of course.
Like, so
in cafeteria.
Well,
I mean, we're
sitting eating, and I don't think anybody else had joined us at the table yet.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And he nonchalantly says that he wrote a song. And so I'm like, oh, what's it about?
I don't remember what happened next, but basically.
And then he's like,
nothing.
Well, he's like, well, it's about you. And I was like, oh, okay.
You're a little weird, but
I wasn't expecting that. But then he wouldn't tell me more about it.
But later, that was the song I used to propose.
Yeah.
So it was like,
no, this is a missed opportunity. He could have brought his guitar. We could have heard that song.
Why isn't the guitar?
I would love to hear it again.
Yeah.
Let's try to do that.
So that's neat. So you did start dating.
Yeah.
And that song came out when you proposed.
Yeah. That's the first time she ever heard it.
Yep.
And
we won't make you sing it, but what's the name of the song?
Who knows?
Oh, it's untitled.
Yeah, it's
okay.
That one song that I wrote for Katie. I don't know.
Aaron was, he definitely pursued me, and he really confirmed that he was fully into our relationship and to me. And I was amazed at the way that he expressed his love to me in creative ways. So like writing the song wasn't the only way he did it. He also, 1 year for Valentine's.
I don't think we need to get into the specifics.
Should I get into it? It's so sweet. You guys might want to, boys, whoever's listening, you may want to take notes. But he bought a calendar, and from the day from Valentine's Day on through the rest of the year, he wrote something that he loved about me.
Wow.
And then he put like a little cut out like a little construction paper and taped it over it. So each day I could pull off something of like, and all the girls on the dorm floor, they would be like, oh, what did he say today? And so he was very romantic and very sweet and intentional. And it really showed that I could trust my heart, like handing it over to him.
So by the time you started dating, like you just kind of knew it was Aaron's heart, his character, and you probably became pretty serious pretty quickly.
Right. And I admired his leadership that he had at the school as well. I liked that he was willing to take leadership in our relationship, but also in relationships with his teammates and with different, like he was an RA, like very good at investing in people's lives. And that was something that I really admired and valued and thought was pretty sweet about him.
That's right. Aaron, were you playing volleyball there?
I was.
Oh, I forgot. You mentioned teammate.
Yes.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Hey, so you guys married after college, shortly after you graduated college. How many years have you been married now?
Who knows? No. Last month was 20 years.
High five.
Yeah. And
That's
so
awesome.
did you have kids right away? And we understand you have a bunch of them. So did you start that right away, or what did your early married years look like?
Well, I wanted to. My parents had me when they were very young. And so like we got married and I was like, well, I guess we'll start having kids. And she's like, what?
Well, one of my main jobs was babysitting when I was growing up. So I was like, I know a little bit of what this entails. I think that we should wait a couple of years if possible. So I think year 4, we had our first child.
Yeah.
And then in about 10 years, we had a total of 5 kids.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And now they are 16 down to 6.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
3 girls, 2 boys.
Awesome. Well, you had said that those years where you did not have children were really important to getting established as a couple, and you did not live near family during that time.
We did initially. Maybe one of the toughest seasons of our marriage was actually the very beginning, because we moved from, Katie is very adventurous, and her plan in college was to maybe be like a teacher in a mission school in like the Philippines or something like that, something that you wanted to do. And when we first were talking about getting married, it's like, well, let's have an adventure. And I was... Yeah,
like we have no commitments. We have no school debt. Let's just go and experience something together. Why we don't have to figure out a school or whatever for kids. Let's just do something.
And that scared me. And I didn't, I wouldn't have worded it that way then.
Right.
But what I wanted to do was something that I knew, that I understood. And so what we ended up doing was go back to my hometown, and I worked for my family business, which there was nothing wrong with that.
Right.
And the thinking was, let's do this, let's be married, and then we'll go into ministry.
Yeah. I think we were both on that same page of thinking, well, we want to be in ministry full time for a long time. And so let's kind of give this first year to each other, rather than, I know with my heart, I'm willing to just jump in fully with ministry. And so I wanted to make sure that we had a good full year of being married together and adjusting to marriage before we jumped into full-time ministry.
So we moved to a town that Katie didn't know really anybody other than my family. And I didn't really know how to function. So one thing about my personality that I've learned through the years is that I can be very adaptive, almost to like a level that's unhealthy. And so I would, college Aaron, dating Katie Aaron, and then there was a different family Aaron and hometown Aaron. And so when we moved back home, I slipped back into that other person. And it was pretty tough, I think, for Katie. I didn't realize at the time how challenging it was on her to be kind of alone. And then for me to it's like, who is this guy kind of, And so we struggled a bit.
It felt kind of extreme for me because I was coming from dorm life at Moody. It was very community, and like, I felt like I was with my sisters, and such a good bond with these people that inspired me, and we were growing in the Lord together. And then to go from there to being in a community where I didn't know anybody.
And Aaron kind of knew a lot of people.
Yeah, but he was also working and coming home very tired. So,
I also tricked her accidentally because the type of person that everybody sees me on the stage, or the type of person that you would see me when I was in college, I'm entertaining, I'm fun, I'm funny, but I'm actually not extroverted. And so
Which surprises people.
Yeah, and it surprised me. I didn't realize that.
So she experienced all that extroverted public Aaron, and then the more private being home alone, I'm very introverted, and so it was a little bit of like, who is this guy that I married? This is not exactly the same guy.
And it's something we hadn't put our finger on. I think we were really intentional about trying to get to we were reading lots of marriage books before we got married, and even doing a little bit of counseling beforehand. And that just somehow, I don't know if it didn't resonate or something, we didn't catch that. And so it was hard to identify when we first got married.
Yeah.
So when was happening.
So if you were to talk to a couple who's maybe in a similar scenario, Aaron, you're talking about, this significant being introverted. What were some of those challenging discussions? And you put it really well, Katie, when you said we couldn't put our finger on it. What was that?
We didn't know what we had to actually work through, because we didn't know if it was just like saying goodbye to our college life to trying to become adults together, of like both of us going to our jobs and then coming home and just trying to figure out a new rhythm. But I think that was part of it. But I think that if I would have understood that you needed as an introvert, you need to be able to come home and rejuvenate, because you've already given out a lot of your energy and words during the day. And then there's not as much for you to give in the evening time. So.
Well, if I could advise somebody who's getting married or in a relationship, I think one of the mistakes I made is I just didn't understand myself.
Yeah.
And I didn't. So I would be functioning in a way and not even understand what I was doing on my own. And so then to be able to explain to Katie, like, oh, well, here's the thing, I need to recharge by being alone. Like I didn't understand it.
Yeah.
So that was a big part of it is, I think that in order to be successful in relationships, whatever they are, part of it is understanding who you are, what you need, being clear with those things. And so if you don't do some self-exploration, you're kind of setting the person you're in a relationship up with for some disappointment.
Yeah, but there was a shift then, kind of this new Aaron, and you're kind of struggling a little bit with loneliness, and this was a little unexpected.
Right.
Did you stay there, or did I hear that you moved out of the area?
Right. We did.
So one of my college teammates, a guy named Joel, so volleyball again, he married a young woman from Lansing. And the church that she grew up in.
All 4 of us went to Moody Bible Institute together. So we all were friends then. Shannon and I would travel to all the volleyball games together and cheer for them. So we had a good relationship.
And they were big fans. I mean, they would paint their faces. They would do their hair crazy. It was awesome. Anyway.
Seriously.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome, Katie.
I think we spelled out Aaron's name on our face. I convinced the girls.
Are there pictures?
Yes, are there pictures?
This needs to come up in a sermon sometime.
Because we're putting him on Ada Bible social media.
Yes.
Especially Aaron in his volleyball outfit.
Right, that would be interesting.
I think we might change the subject now, Kelly. I'm just kidding. So I'll make this story shorter. What ended up happening is through that couple, we got invited to, candidate at this church as a high school pastor. And so it was earlier than we planned. I think we only ended up being living in Caledonia for like 9 months. Right. Maybe I'm misremembering. But we went over to Lansing. We interviewed, we went through that whole process. They hired me. And so we moved over there, and that started kind of a new era. And so we had friends there already.
Yeah, established friends.
Yep. And then we had a thing to do together that was called youth ministry.
Right.
And Katie was working a different job, but it was like we had this thing together. And so especially in the early days there, we did mission trips together. Katie was a small group leader. We did, and so that's really where our relationship started to take off. Yeah. I think it was big. It was big for us to kind of go off on our own adventure and establish ourselves.
Right.
And this is all before kids, kind of doing this ministry side by side. And then where were you when you started your family?
We were in Lansing.
The first 2 were born there.
Yep.
And then things shifted. Were you still serving side by side in different ways, or?
So I think when I had Keegan, our oldest, I was still able to serve quite a bit. And then once I had a second child, then I think I was starting to step back. But thankfully, I did not feel a bitterness towards it. I think because I had already invested in that place with him and those people, and I had those good relationships already established, that I was fully excited about pouring into my own kids at that point and being with them so that Aaron could be at the church and investing in the youth there. So it wasn't as hard of a transition as I would have thought. I mean, that doesn't mean that I didn't feel lonely or miss being a part of some of it, but I was fully excited for Aaron to be there, and I was fully excited to be with my kids, my young ones.
Well, it's neat to think about too, because we know your role, Aaron. It's very involved. In what ways do you see ministry now, even though we only see Aaron up there, as still being kind of ministry side by side? Right. In what ways, do you get to contribute to that?
Well, I feel like the Lord's really blessed us, because in a way that I feel very thankful for, maybe is a better way to say it, and that Aaron, his gifting is very in front, and I love to do more of the behind the scenes things, and I know the importance that comes from supporting people. And I think I feel like I'm very much relationally oriented, and it doesn't have to be from a stage, or it doesn't have to be very vocal or visual. I see that there's benefit from
definitely
long-term relationships and things. So if I can support him for taking care of our kids and relieving him from that stress, then I'm all about it, and I'm going to enjoy that. But I also felt like I was able to still connect with people within the church when we were out south and when we came here to Ada. in a way that was beneficial and would fill me up too, because I feel like my cup is filled up when I'm able to invest in other people's lives and as well. And Aaron was willing to make sure that I got to have those types of moments throughout the week as well.
Yeah, it's something else that's kind of interesting. Katie has a Bible degree. And so it's funny when because when I'm studying for a sermon, I'll get excited about some idea, or something that I feel like I've discovered. And I can't tell you how many times I'm like, Katie, I was reading this thing and then like I saw this and then I read this other thing and these two things connect. And she always like listens really nicely. And she's like, yeah, I learned that like, from this study that I did like 5 years ago.
No, it is fun to to talk through things. I love hearing how Aaron's preparing for sermons, and I love when he shares those things that excites him. And it's really fun when I feel like I've been under a teacher or a Bible study where I've learned something similar and we can engage in that too. So that is neat.
Thank you for your role in sermon prep.
Exactly.
I know. Now, Kelly, I'm gathering that they are wired quite differently.
Oh, it sure sounds like it.
I think so too.
And so how has that been, the challenges, the beauties of being different? How's that been for you guys?
It's been a journey. That would probably be the first thing. And it's been good, formational. One of the big differences between us is just emotions. Katie is a very emotional person, very emotive, empathetic. If you are telling a story that's sad, Katie will cry. If you're crying, Katie's going to cry. This is the way that she is. She's the best person to share emotions with. She has the ability to be present with people in very powerful ways. My dad in his cancer journey, I think his favorite person in that is Katie. She just has a way of being very comfortable with hard things. And, so she can say things, especially to him, that I have more trouble saying because she can freely enter into that space and engage, at a deep level. And the contrast for that is I, especially early on, unaware of my emotions, unwilling to engage my emotions, want to exit emotions quickly. I'm very much wired for achievement and performance. And those things, emotions get in the way of that, And so
they're a bother.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I will deal with that later or, don't have time. So I think a story, I hope you don't mind me telling this one, but one of the first times I felt the difference was early on when we were first married, living in Caledonia, and who knows what we were talking about, arguing about. And Katie got upset and she went to our room, slammed the door, and she was crying. And I literally thought, I married a crazy person.
Wow.
And I just didn't realize, because I came from a family that was more like, you just don't express those emotions. And so I just didn't have, and Katie came from a family where if there was a conflict, you would have it out for a bit. And then you'd be fine, And in a conflict, relational conflict, my natural instinct is to either run or pretend that it's not happening, And Katie's is to engage. And so we had to figure that out. And I think we're still figuring it out because I don't always react the best way initially, And so it's a challenge, but it's also been a growth area, in particular for me.
I really appreciate that we're different because I think it's challenging me to make sure that I'm keeping those emotions that can be a good thing, but to also keep them in check when they're not helpful in the situation. Like I can sometimes lean towards when things are hard or frustrating or anger or something like that. I could bring too much emotion into a relationship or a conversation. And I think that since Aaron didn't feel as comfortable with emotion, that it was helping me to see that I needed to have, I didn't want to erase emotion, but I needed to have a good place to filter my emotions and to make sure that they had accountability. I've heard it say that emotions need to be present, but they can't be the driver of the situation. So that's something that I feel like I want to consciously and be aware of and be working through. And,
Yeah.
It's 20 years and I'm still needing to work on it because it's just naturally how I'm wired. It can be very beneficial, but it can also be something that's not helpful to the relationship.
Yeah, I think that for marriages, a helpful perspective is there will be a few differences between the partners that will always be a source of conflict. Like, it's just never going to, like, we're never going to be to the point where it's like, oh yeah, now we process emotions the same way. Isn't that nice?
Yeah.
Like, this is not going to happen.
Right.
True.
So it's always going to be something we have to keep an eye on and be aware of. But at the same time, there's a huge potential for growth, you know? So I have become a better pastor, a better parent, a better person from learning from Katie. You know, a good example is just a couple of weeks ago, one of our kids, undisclosed name, was really upset before school. Who knows what it's even about? I mean, they were going to miss the bus and she really wanted to be on the bus. And so she just lost it, you know, and I was thinking I need to get to work. I have a sermon to write, you know, like there's going to be so many people watching, you know, and it's like, I got to get this done. And so I'm like, essentially, hopefully I didn't word it like this, but you need to pull it together and we're going to school, you know, and Katie's just like, she just needs a minute to be sad and she'll be all right. And it was totally true. Like Katie, you know, just holds her or whatever, listens to her, let her freak out for a bit. And then, we're off to school. And it's like, okay, Katie just has the ability to be in that emotion with somebody. And for me, it's like, okay, that's a good reminder. Don't just blow through it, you know, and you're going to do damage to relationships if you don't acknowledge it. So that's just an example. And there's times too where the opposite, you know, we do have teenagers and sometimes they have drama. And in those moments,
really, teenagers?
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes not yours.
Interesting,
of course, just mine. Yeah. And so on the flip side, it's the, you know, hey, okay, we're not going to engage the drama. We're going to get right to the thing. And this is what you need to do right now. You know, so
that's true.
Yeah, there's both sides and we're both learning from each other. But I do think every couple out there has some areas that they're, okay, this is trouble. It's not just trouble. It's also opportunity if you approach it that way.
Yeah, well, I love that.
Yeah. And you mentioned the kids. So your kids are, what is the age range? Like your youngest is how?
6 up to 16.
And then you're going to have a driver?
We do have a driver.
I already got one.
Yep. Okay.
Yep.
So you probably parent a little bit differently. Right. When did that become evident to you?
Well, Katie is the superstar parent, especially with the younger kids. So things I just described. Yep. She's a nurturer, Katie, and the emotions of little kids and everything, you know, she's just really good in that space. And I was a youth pastor for years. And so now it feels like it's flipping a little bit where I have more presence and a voice, you know, because of the teenagers.
Yep.
So,
yeah. How's that work, Aaron? Like, flesh that out. Like, what's that look like? That you're tapping into some stuff within yourself to be a really amazing parent to these teenagers.
Well, I don't know if I'd call it amazing parent.
Well, think of the well you can draw from having done all this youth ministry.
Well, the joke I make is I was a youth pastor for 15 years and I still need to call our, you know, youth director here at Ada Bible with they're doing this thing and I don't understand it, you know. So when it's your own kids, it's just different. You know, you might have all the principles and techniques, but I don't know. I think that I'm just there's something about the teenage years, this isn't always true, where a dad, it used to be, well, with our little kids, they get hurt and I try to help them. I want mom, you know, get away from me, you know. And when they're teenagers, it just seems like it kind of flips, you know. And on the one hand, it's hard to watch because Katie has poured countless hours into these kids and now they would prefer to go to me. And sometimes these teenagers are even rude to their mom, you know, and that's just hard to, it's not fair and it's hard to watch. And I know they'll come back around, but, and so it's very clearly an era where I need to be more present, have, you know, some of the hard conversations and give more like shoulder to shoulder kind of advice to the kids.
I think there's a lot of lessons to draw from that.
Yeah. They have, Aaron has a voice that the teens, our kids that are teens now, that they can really hear it and receive it from him. And I think since my voice has been the nurturing and the like, let me care for you for so long that they need a little bit of space to grow up and to feel like they're older. And so I feel like Aaron can give them that. And I love that they receive that from them. That's what's so cool about being in this together, is that that we both still have a role, and we both did in the past as well. But to be able to share that and to know where it's not working for me, but it's working for Aaron, it makes me really appreciate the partnership that we have in that together.
That's cool. So, question for you: how does faith impact your guys' marriage?
I think, you want to talk or shall I go?
You can start.
I think that if you come into a relationship with, it has a lot to do with identity. If your identity is securely anchored in Christ, and you know who you are, and you come more whole to a relationship, it's just a different kind of relationship. And so something I've appreciated about Katie is that Katie has a very strong faith and very natural trust. We were talking the other day, like there is a such thing as a spiritual gift of faith, and she might just have it. She just naturally believes, and she's come, and she comes with a strong sense of confidence and assuredness in herself, and a security, and so it's almost like she doesn't need anything from this relationship. That's a little strong to say, but I mean, because I know in marriage, you open yourself up and say, I need you for this. But it's different than when you approach a marriage as like, I'm getting into this because this is going to make me whole or better. And she has, at first it was intimidating how secure and, solid she is. But I just think that faith can have that kind of impact in a relationship where now you show up to serve. And now you show up to do something together rather than I need you to do this for me so that I can be okay.
Yeah.
And so I think we had some of that. We were growing in those areas in the early days, and that has set us up to succeed in marriage, I think. So that would be one thing, how faith impacts.
Yeah.
Katie, what do you think?
Well, I don't know. He might have taken my answer, but I do think that the more that I can be filled up in the Lord and really working on what I'm seeing as selfishness, or where I am insecure, or where I do need to trust the Lord. Like if I can be constantly going to the Lord to find that, then I'm going to bring a much better Katie to to our marriage than if I was ignoring my relationship with the Lord. If I do get in a drought with the Lord, I can definitely see that our marriage is not as strong, or it doesn't feel as healthy as it has been in other seasons. So I really think that's been the key for our healthiness, is like if I am, where both of us are spending our time in the Lord, whether it's in at different phases of life were really hard for me to have that. I grew up going to church and always heard about having a quiet time, and I always had this really high expectation of like, I want to have a quiet hour-long, time with the Lord. But that's not always realistic, especially when you have a lot of little kids and you're up all night and you're exhausted. So at different seasons of life, I've felt like I've been able to connect with the Lord in different ways. When I had one child that hardly slept at all, and I would be doing circles in the house trying to get a baby to sleep, I feel like my prayer life was the closest I've ever experienced, because, well, I'm not going to just use this time to become bitter. I'm going to start thinking of every other mom that I know that needs prayer right now, or I'm going to pray for peace and patience, and that I would have the fruit of the Spirit in this moment. And then there's other times where I still didn't have maybe as that hour-long devotion time that I wanted to have, but I could turn on worship music and just feel connected to the Lord. And I think any way that I can connect with the Lord in those ways really influenced my heart and makes my heart soft and not hard. Earlier this year, I was reading through Ezekiel, and there was a lot about having a heart that became like a stone, and but praying that we would have a fleshly heart, like a soft heart. And I think that as long as my heart can be tender towards the Lord, my heart will also be tender and humble in the marriage relationship as well.
Yeah. Wow, that's a good answer.
Amazing how faith impacts that. And I love how God has used you in one another's lives to grow your faith, through the parenting challenges and through, some unexpecteds. Now, expectations, you brought those up. You got your start as a Christian couple that was pretty mature in your faith. Did you imagine you would have struggles, or did you imagine it would go smoothly? Like, what was your mindset early on when you got married?
Well, one thing I thought was helpful was the stuff we did before marriage.
Yeah.
We read that book. It must have been an early version of it, Saving Your Marriage Before It Starts.
Yes.
And actually a bunch of different books. And so we had a bunch of very honest conversations about expectations.
We were trying to what's the word where you're I don't know. We were wanting to do everything we could ahead of time to set us up for success. And so we were buying all those books that talk about how you're going to spend the holidays. What are your expectations for spending money or vacations? And just lots of questions. The more questions we could ask and answer each other, we were the better, because then we might not be as surprised when we actually are.
We would show up to these, we'd be at Caribou Coffee or something, and it's okay, share your answer first, It was
it was really fun and interesting how different we could be too. But it was a cool way to get to know each other and maybe have a little bit of a picture of how we're going to, where it might have some tension.
And even with all that work, there was the surprises of
you being an introvert and me maybe not being an introvert. I'm not sure.
So I don't know. Had we not had some of those conversations, I think it would have been harder.
Right.
So those were important.
For sure.
But you I think you had shared when we talked privately too, just early on, you thought, we're in this for the long haul, because I think it is bumps come, right, in marriages. And you've shared about some, that things that you've worked through and how your faith really got you through those times. And so how has that served your marriage well?
Yeah. Well, I mean, both of us have parents who are still married. So we do have a wonderful legacy behind us or ahead of us. And but then we also just knew from the very beginning, I don't even know, we just knew that no matter what seasons we were going to have ahead of us, we knew some of them are going to be hard. We just had that expectation, and that we would work towards each other. When it got hard, then instead of pulling back or pulling away, we were going to press in towards one another even more. So I think we had somewhat of a healthy understanding that hardships were going to come, and that there was no questioning, well, what are we going to do now? It was well, obviously we're going to press into each other. That means that we're going to have the hard conversations, and we're going to get help when we need help.
Yeah. I don't think there was anything that, hey, I hope this works, or I think our understanding of marriage, we tried to approach it from a biblical perspective, which is, this is a covenant that we're making with each other and before God. And so we just approached marriage as in, we're going to make this work. And I know that that's not how everybody's story goes, but there's a difference between, hopefully this works, and okay, we're going to do everything that we can to make this work.
We wanted to make it work for us, but we also wanted to be an example to our kids. We wanted to be in ministry full time together.
Yep.
Well, while we have you, we don't want to miss getting a couple words of advice from you, because you said you have 5 children.
Yeah.
True.
So a couple words of wisdom from you as a married couple to other married couples who have several children. What would your advice be?
I think some things that we have been able to do is recognize when the other person's out of gas.
Yeah.
And not every couple would do this, but we have in the past done separate trips because we have a lot of kids. And, so Katie's favorite thing is family, whether it's our family or her family of origin, or sister, her parents, cousins. And so even just this past year, it was a trip that Katie took down to Texas with her sister and cousin, sister-in-law. And so, and I have a men's group. I have different back in the day, I used to use study groups, you know, with some guys that I worked with. And so it's kind of like okay, I can tell you're exhausted. You know, what do you think about taking a break? That's a big thing. We are in the rhythm of doing a Sabbath together. And so Friday is my one consistent day off. And this hasn't always been the case. In fact, for 15 years when we had little kids at home, it was harder to do. But now we're in a season where on Fridays, the kids are in school and we're not. And so we just do whatever we want to do, you know, and so we are intentional about spending that time together and not turning it into yard work day or, you know, whatever. You know, last week we drove out to the lakeshore and just drove around in the fall colors and talked, you know, went to lunch. And so I think advice I would give is you got to serve each other when, and give each other breaks and bless each other in that way. And then you have to have intentional time where you're pouring into the relationship or it's going to drift, you know?
Well, thank you for inviting us into your Fridays. And that could so easily get missed. And just making that fresh investment in us, right? As a couple is inspiring.
So I just have two questions for you guys. And this is off the cuff, so good luck.
Kelly loves doing this.
What, you guys have been married 20 years. That is an accomplishment. And one of the things I've noticed with my marriage with Julie and I is if I look back, sometimes you can kind of characterize phases of it.
Sure.
What's something you're loving about being married right now that maybe you didn't experience in your early marriage? You know, what's something that maybe you're learning or growing? Obviously, it maybe even ties back to these Sabbath days that you're learning stuff there. So who wants to go first on that one?
Well, I love seeing Aaron in leadership. I love how I get to see him doing that in our home. And I also love seeing him doing that with his coworkers and with the people he's investing in. And I love that he has like a vision and is excited about future and like can get behind people and encourage them and get them to do their best. So I see that in his work that he does that, and I see that in our home and doing that. And that's something that I really enjoy seeing, especially even more now that we're a little bit older. But another thing, I mean, I kind of already touched base with this, but I love the way that he interacts with our teenagers. And it's so refreshing to know that his words really matter to their lives. And so he can speak into that and into their lives, and that they're like sponges right now. And his voice is very important, and he's taking the time to really speak into that. And so I really appreciate and admire that about him.
Well, that's nice.
No pressure on that, Aaron.
I think he's getting emotional.
Can you top that?
No, I cannot top that, but I will talk. It feels like a season of depth in our relationship, I would say. And there's just something about, I mean, we still have little kids, I guess, but not toddlers. Right. And when you're a parent of young kids, there's just so much of you that's just being poured out constantly.
Yes.
And there's not a lot of time for unrushed, deep conversations. And it's part of life, and it's a good part of life, and it's a journey, and you do learn a lot through that, and it's very rewarding. But right now it feels like it's a season of depth for us, because I think we're both doing more self-discovery, more learning, but then we're having good, deeper, unrushed conversations that we weren't able to have before. Since like, it almost feels like, back dating in college or something. So that's nice. It's a rich time in that respect. And it doesn't happen every day. In fact, most days of the week, because of the size of our family, it's like, oh, hey, hi. Okay, good night, but there are moments that are really nice.
That's awesome. Well, Aaron and Katie, thank you so much for being on the podcast. And thank you for all that you are both contributing to the work God is doing at Ada Bible Church. We love that you're part of this church family. I love being on staff with you, Aaron. Kelly does too. And we feel like you're part of the staff team too, Katie.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Ada's always felt like home to me. From the moment that Aaron was interviewing, I was like, this is a place I want to be. And it's so refreshing to be a part and to have him on staff, but also to be excited to bring my kids to this church and to invest in many different areas of Ada. So I'm very thankful for Ada.
Awesome. Thanks again.
Thanks.
What an incredible podcast. I feel like I've learned so much. And listeners, if you feel the same, we'd love to know how you've been impacted by what you've heard today. There are several ways to reach out and to let us know, whether it be commenting or leaving a review on your podcasting platform. Don't forget, you can also email us at care@adabible.org. For Rachel Norton and Kelly Bonniwell, this has been Together.
Thanks for listening to Together. We hope you've learned a thing or two. If you find the podcast helpful, please go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your listening platform, leave a comment, and give us a 5-star rating. If you'd like more information on Ada Bible Church and its ministries, or someone to pray or dialogue with about your marriage, go online and check out our website at adabible.org.